Hello dear viewers, a very warm welcome to our channel. It's very good to have you here. In this video we are going to have a look at symptoms of a bad universal joint or U-joint. A universal joint is a mechanical coupling that connects drive shaft to the differential or two drive shafts, and it will allow angle variation between the shafts, and it allows torque to be transmitted between them even though they are not perfectly aligned. So that is a benefit of a universal joint. For example, when the vehicle is moving on an irregular surface, the drive shaft assembly will change in angle due to the irregularity, and that is accommodated by the universal joint. Now, symptoms often start stably and get progressively worse when the universal joint starts to go bad. Let's have a look at some of the warning signs indicating bad universal joint. Well, the most common early symptom of a bad universal joint is vibration. You will feel rhythmic shaking or vibration through the vehicle floor, through the vehicle seat, and through the floor of the vehicle. And it is often speed sensitive, starting at certain speed. If the vibration continues, and that is usually caused by a universal joint that has gone bad. And the vibration is usually related to the drivetrain. It is not related to the engine, and the vibration will start only when the vehicle starts moving. So that is an early indication of a failing universal joint. Clanking sound sometimes can indicate a failing universal joint. Loud, distinct clank when shifting from drive to reverse, or when you quickly get on or off the throttle valve, can also be indicative of a failing universal joint. This is caused by excessive play in the worn out universal joint. Now there is some method of checking if this is excessively wear. You grab one side of the universal joint and you try to shake the other end of the coupling. If there is some relative motion between these two members, it indicates the internal parts are worn or damaged. Usually what happens is this is the central part, this is the cross. It will wear out. It is usually lubricated with grease, high quality grease. Now if that grease is thrown out, the spider will get worn out. And the bearing, this bearing, it has rollers inside. Those rollers are lubricated internally by grease. Through time, that will be thrown out and that will cause clearance. Now, as you move it slightly, you will see if there is wear, you will see vibration. So that is an indication, an early indication of a failing universal joint. Intermediate symptoms also indicate squeaking or chirping when driving. A high-pitched squeaking that occurs in rhythm with throttle response and with rotation from the drive shaft. This is often heard at low speed. It's also indicative of a failing universal joint. This is typically due to lack of lubrication inside the joint. As we have said earlier, the bearings, they get lubricated with grease, and if that is thrown out, that will cause excessive noise while driving. The squeak might disappear at certain speed. If you happen to notice there is a driveline shudder, that is also an indicator of a failing universal joint. A more severe vibration that feels like the entire vehicle is shuddering could be caused by a failing universal joint. This is especially during acceleration, when you are accelerating from a stop or when you are driving your vehicle under heavy load. If you feel that kind of driveline shuddering, it could be an indication of a failing universal joint. Clicking or knocking sound, a repetitive clicking sound that gets faster as the vehicle speeds up, also indicates a failing universal joint. And metallic grinding or scraping sound, the sound of metallic grinding on metal, this means the joint is completely dry. If there is no lubrication in here, if the grease is thrown out, and if there is a dry metal on metal contact, that will cause very distinctive knocking and metal grinding noise. So it is an indication of a failing universal joint. Visible rust or grease on these surfaces is also indication of a failing joint. If the grease is leaking out, if you see grease oozing out of this universal joint, that is an indication of a failing universal joint as well. And physically, if you can physically grab the drive shaft, try to rotate it, as we have said earlier. Grab one end of the universal joint and try to rock it sideways. If you see there is a free play, that means the universal joint is worn out. So that is how you can check if it is okay or not. Never do this without the vehicle properly supported on jack stand with the parking brake applied and vehicle wheels choked. That has to be done by put your transmission in neutral, try to rock it and see if there is relative motion between those two. Sometimes the universal joints may face a catastrophic failure. This is when there is a catastrophic damage to the universal joint. This is usually when the universal joint detach. The drive shaft can separate from the transmission or the differential, and it might cause this propeller shaft to drop onto the road, and this can totally damage the universal joint. When we look at some of the main causes leading to universal joint failure, as we have mentioned earlier, the number one cause is lack of lubrication. The most common cause of a early universal joint failure is lack of lubrication. The universal joint, all these members, they are greased. Now, if that grease is leaking out, if there is no lubrication, that will cause catastrophic universal joint failure. Many universal joints have a grease fitting. Some of them have a grease fitting on the spider. Some of them have a grease fitting for the slip ring, and some of them have a grease nipple at the spider of the universal joint. If you see right here, if you see right there, there is a grease nipple on the spider. The grease nipple on the cross. Now when you apply grease in here, when you apply grease into this, it will split to all of the cross members, and that can distribute grease. This can prolong the service life of the universal joint. So for periodic maintenance, you can use those. If not greased, the needle bearings inside the universal joints, they will feel dry. There are needle bearings, if you see them, there are needle bearings in there. Those are the ones that are going to be connected to the spider, and those are the ones that are going to apply, those are the ones that are going to transmit power. And the needle bearings inside the cap wear down from friction and heat. Eventually, that will cause failure of the component as well. So, the number one cause of universal joint failure is lack of lubrication. The other cause of universal joint failure is normal wear and tear. Gradually, if it is driven for long period, if it is driven for hundreds of thousands of cycles, the bearings and cross, they simply wear out, and there is nothing you can do about that. Sometimes water and contamination of the universal joint can make the life shorter. If the vehicle is frequently driven through deep water, mud, or off-road, water and grit can breach into the universal joint. It might breach the seal and get entrance into the needle bearing side, and this washes away the protective grease and introduce abrasive particles that are accelerating wear of the universal joint. And sometimes corrosion, internal corrosion and rust accumulation in the universal joint can also be causes, especially in areas that use road salt, and rust and salt that get trapped in here can cause it to seize and prevent it from rotating freely. Overloading can also lead to early premature universal joint failure. Consistently towing heavy loads or launching your vehicle or rock crawling, this places extreme stress on the universal joint, leading to premature failure of the universal joint as well. Sometimes improper installation, if this is serviced and if it is improperly installed, that can cause failure. If the U-joint is not pressed in correctly, or if the circlips are not fully seated, it can cause a binding or rapid failure of the drive shaft, and that can cause early failure of the universal joint as well. So, if you suspect the universal joint is at trouble, then don't ignore it. The symptoms will get bigger and bigger if they are not fixed on time. Have it inspected immediately, and if it requires replacement, have it replaced as soon as possible. If one universal joint on a drive shaft is bad, then it is highly recommended to replace all the universal joint on that similar shaft at the same time, because they have endured the same wear and tear condition. So it's a good idea to replace them at once. And once the universal joint is replaced, it is a good idea to have a drive line balanced. After replacing, it is very critical to have the drive shaft balanced, and that will eliminate any kind of abnormality or any kind of irregular vibration. Unbalanced drive shafts are primary cause of vibration, and those vibrations can lead to premature universal joint failure. So have it balanced. You see balance weights attached here on the drive shaft. This is to make sure that the universal joint will not be facing excessive vibration from unbalanced drive shaft as well. Addressing a bad universal joint early is therefore, it is an inexpensive repair, but if you ignore it, it is like gambling with your safety, and it will lead to much more expensive drive. It could lead to failure of the universal joint, failure of the drive shaft, and it could sometimes lead to failure of the differential as well. So it's a good idea to have it replaced as soon as you notice there is some abnormality. It is a good idea. And if it is a greasable type, don't ignore and have a preventive maintenance. Grease it periodically, and that will prolong the service life of the universal joint. Well, dear viewers, that is all we have for you regarding some of the symptoms of a failing universal joint and some of the things you can do in order to prolong the service life of your universal joint. If you like what has been presented, please smash the like button. If you are new to this channel, do consider subscribing, turn on notifications so that you will be the first to get notified whenever we come up with another video. Until then, stay safe.